The sun had already dropped below the horizon when Dwayne Johnson turned onto the winding country road that led toward home. His muscles ached. His mind buzzed with the last 14 hours of shooting stunts, retakes, late lighting calls. All he wanted now was silence. The kind of silence you feel in your chest, not just in your ears. That he drove without music. Just the low hum of the engine, the open stretch of night, and the weight of exhaustion pressing behind his eyes. But then he saw it first. He thought it was a distant sunset flare, some strange reflection in the rearview mirror. Then he smelled it, smoke. That he rolled the window down. The smell hit him like a punch, thick, chemical, wrong. That he slowed the car, and then he saw the flames. That it wasn't a campfire. Not a brush fire. That it was a house, burning, fast. That he pulled the truck to the side of the road so hard the tires screamed against the gravel. By the time he jumped out, he was already running. There was no thinking. Just instinct. Movement. Breath. Screams cut through the air, not loud, not chaotic. More like a single cry that couldn't decide whether it was fear or disbelief. On the front lawn stood a woman in a robe, barefoot, holding two children tightly against her. Her face was streaked with ash, her mouth open, but no sound came out. Next to her, a man, her husband, probably, was half collapsed, one leg bent awkwardly, trying to get up. Is anyone still inside? Dwayne shouted. The woman shook her head, too fast, too many times. No, we just got out. He went back in for my phone. I told him not to. She broke down mid-sentence. Dwayne was already beside the man. Smoke poured out of the windows now, glass cracking in the heat. He crouched, helped the man to his feet, and half carried, half dragged him farther away from the fire. The children sobbed. One of them stared at Dwayne with wide, glassy eyes, recognizing him but unable to speak. Don't look at me, Dwayne said gently. Look at your mom. You're okay now. He turned to the woman. Stay right here. I've got this. He sprinted back to the truck. His phone. 911, calm, clear. This is Dwayne Johnson. I'm on Mill Road just south of Lakemont. House fire. Family's out. No one inside. Husband injured. Send everything. Then he went back. He grabbed the garden hose, useless against the inferno, but he aimed it anyway, soaking the dry grass to slow the spread. Neighbors were arriving now, some on foot, others in cars. But no one moved close. They watched him. The Rock, now just a man fighting a fire, hands blackened, shirt soaked, standing in smoke up to his knees. When the fire trucks finally arrived, their lights cut through the dark like judgment. He didn't wait for thanks. He stayed as they treated the husband, wrapped blankets around the mother and kids, and taped off the scene. Only when the last flame was out, only when the skeleton of the house stood smoking and broken, did he exhale. The mother walked over to him, clutching a borrowed blanket. Her lips trembled. We didn't have anything. And now we really have nothing. Dwayne looked at her, really looked at her. The exhaustion, the disbelief, the kind of grief that hasn't fully landed yet. He didn't say, it'll be okay. He said, you're alive. And in that moment, that was enough, but he already knew it wouldn't end there. He wouldn't let it. 2 weeks had passed since the fire. Ash still clung to the trees outside the blackened shell of what used to be their home. The smell of it, burnt wood, scorched plastic, melted memories, still haunted the mother's clothes no matter how many times she washed them. Her name was Elise. She was 34, a nurse's aide who had worked nights to keep the lights on. Her husband, Marcus, couldn't walk without crutches now. He had torn ligaments trying to go back into the house for nothing but a phone and a family photo. And though the injury ached, it wasn't the physical pain that hurt most. They had lost everything, every sock. Every birthday card. Every school project, gone in minutes. Now they were sleeping in a borrowed trailer behind a friend's church. The kids shared one bed. Elise slept in a camping chair with a blanket over her knees. Marcus, propped up in the corner, barely spoke. Guilt was a strange kind of silence. It didn't scream. It sank. It was a Tuesday afternoon, gray and windless. Snowflakes danced but never truly fell, and then, 3 knocks on the trailer door. Elise opened it. She blinked once. Then again, and there he was. Dwayne Johnson stood just outside, hat pulled low, coat buttoned against the cold, snowflakes clinging to his shoulders. In one hand, a duffel bag. In the other, a thick folder sealed with a paperclip. "Hey," he said softly. "I hope this isn't too early." Elise couldn't speak. Behind her, her daughter gasped. "Mom," she whispered, "it's the Rock." Dwayne laughed gently. "Just Dwayne today, okay?" Marcus hobbled to the door. "You came back, I said I would." They let him in. The space was tight: kitchen, sofa, a narrow table cluttered with cereal boxes and crumpled paper towels. Dwayne moved slowly, respectfully, as if he didn't want to take up more room than needed. That he sat on a plastic folding chair like it was a throne. No cameras. No crew. No one else. "First," he said, reaching into the duffel, "this is for the kids." He handed each of them a wrapped bundle. Not toys, but coats. Warm ones. With thick gloves. Wool hats. Waterproof boots. Their names embroidered on the inside tags. "You don't need to freeze to feel strong," he said. The little boy, barely 6, stared at him like he'd fallen from the sky. Then Dwayne turned to Elise and Marcus. "Look," he said. "I know it's been hell. I saw it on your faces the night of the fire. You didn't just lose a home, you lost safety. You lost ground. You lost breath." He opened the folder. "These are your keys now." Elise looked down. She thought maybe it was a motel voucher. A short-term rental. It was neither. She saw the street address, she saw the deed transfer, she saw one number written in bold, $0.00 "Wait," Marcus whispered. "Is this our name on the deed?" Dwayne nodded. "I bought it outright. 3-bedroom, 2-bath. It's not huge, but it's solid. It's clean. It's yours." Elisa's eyes filled instantly. Her hands went to her mouth. Her whole body folded in half from the weight of gratitude she couldn't express. Marcus sat down fast, like someone had knocked the breath out of him. "You saved us once," Elise said, voice shaking. "You didn't have to do this." "No," Dwayne said. "I didn't. But I couldn't not. Some moments stay with you. That fire, watching your little girl scream, watching you limp back toward the house, stayed with me. I don't want you starting over from zero. I want you starting over with hope." He reached again into the bag. "Car keys." "Elise, you're back to work soon, right?" "Marcus, rehab's gonna take time. You can't rely on rides forever." He held out the keys, to a 2022 Chevy Tahoe. "Paid in full. Tanks full, too." Marcus looked down at his hands. "I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything. Just use it. Take your kids to school. Drive to church. Pick up groceries without wondering how to carry them on foot." The kids had gone completely quiet, until the girl, 10 years old, said in the softest voice, "Are we gonna be warm again?" Elisa's shoulders crumpled in tears, and Dwayne, he leaned forward and gently put his hand on the child's head. "Yeah," he said. "You're gonna be warm for a long, long time." They didn't take a photo, they didn't ask for autographs. Dwayne stayed for almost 2 hours. He asked about school. He helped Marcus practice getting into the car. He made sure the new house had a stocked fridge. He gave them the name of a friend who could help with job applications and home repairs, and then, before he left, he did something even more unexpected. He asked Elise if they had any surviving pictures. She said no. So he pulled out a small Polaroid camera from the bag. "Let's take one." She hesitated, but then smiled. They took one photo. Just one. The kids between them. Marcus on the side, leaning on his crutch. Dwayne behind, arms gently across their shoulders, not like a star posing for publicity, but like a brother reminding them they were safe. He left the picture with them. "I don't need it," he said. "You do." And just like that, he stepped out into the cold again. When they moved into the new home 2 days later, the kids ran barefoot through carpeted hallways. Elise stood in the kitchen with the note he'd left behind, shaking in her hands. "This isn't charity. This is family." take care of each other, and when the time comes be the reason someone else survives their fire. DJ. The new house was warmed at it had soft carpets, 2 working bathrooms, and a refrigerator full of food before the family ever stepped inside. But what struck Elise most wasn't the space or the safety. It was that, somehow, it already felt like home, and then, just a week after they moved in, the doorbell rang, she opened it, and there he was again, Dwayne, same jacket. Same quiet eyes. A bag of groceries in one hand, a basketball under the other. Hope you don't mind, he said. I was in the area. They laughed. Not because it was funny but because it felt like joy was finally allowed again that he didn't stay long. Just helped Marcus tighten a loose hinge on the front door, showed the kids how to dribble in the driveway, and sat for a minute on the porch with Elise while the sky turned gold. That he didn't bring cameras. That he didn't say much, but before he left, he said, I'll be by again soon. And he was that he came the next weekend with a toolbox and helped hang up the kids' new bedroom curtains, then again the following Friday, this time with a set of books for the kids and a tablet for their schoolwork. Sometimes he brought food. Sometimes nothing at all. Sometimes he just sat at the table and listened. That it wasn't charity, that it was friendship. And Elise began to realize something. Dwayne wasn't trying to make headlines, that he was trying to make sure they never felt small again. One day, Marcus asked him, why do you keep coming back? They were working on the garage door. Snow had just started to fall. Dwayne paused. Looked up. I don't like fire, he said quietly. I've seen it destroy things people never talk about. And I've seen what happens when everyone shows up for the flames but no one stays for the rebuilding. He looked Marcus in the eye. So I stay. Eventually, he gave them more. One afternoon he showed up with a guitar used, a little worn, but beautiful. I heard Elise used to play, he said. She stared at it for a long time before she could even touch the strings. Another night, he brought Marcus a high-end leg brace, not the generic one from the hospital. This one won't make you limp so hard. He smiled. When they asked how they could ever repay him, he just said, you already did. You survived. The kids stopped calling him The Rock. They called him Uncle D. And somehow, that felt more right, because he didn't act like a movie star. That he acted like someone who had chosen to show up not once, but always. That he never told anyone, never posted, never gave interviews. That it wasn't a story. That it was a promise, and he kept it. That be why the time spring came, it was hard to imagine the house without him. Dwayne had become part of the rhythm, not in a loud way. He didn't knock down the door or make grand gestures. He didn't arrive in black SUVs or with people trailing behind. He came like someone who belonged. A quiet presence who knew how to fix a leaky faucet, how to play cards with a 10-year-old, how to sit in silence with a man still learning how to walk without shame. Elise once told her sister, he never makes us feel like we owe him. He just makes us feel seen. And that was the difference. One Saturday afternoon, while the kids played basketball in the driveway, Dwayne sat on the porch with Marcus, sipping lemonade out of mismatched mugs. I've been thinking, he said. Marcus raised an eyebrow. That's usually dangerous. Dwayne chuckled. Remember how you said you used to fix up cars back in the day? Before the accident? Yeah, Marcus said slowly. Used to mess around with engines. Took apart my first transmission when I was 15. Why? Dwayne reached into his jacket pocket and handed over a folded brochure. On the front, a photo of a small, dusty garage space for lease just 10 minutes from their new home. I paid the deposit, Dwayne said. 3 months. It's yours if you want to give it a shot. Marcus stared at it. I can't run a garage. Not yet, Dwayne agreed. But maybe you can start with 1 car. Fix it. Flip it. Just like you used to. You don't have to make it big. Just make it yours. Marcus looked down at the paper again. His hands trembled slightly. Why are you doing this? Dwayne sat back. Because you're not broken, man. You just stopped being reminded of what you could do. I figure maybe it's time someone helped you remember. A week later, they opened the garage.no signs. No grand opening. Just a borrowed socket set, a space heater, and an old pickup truck donated by a friend of Dwayne's. Marcus worked slowly. cautiously. But the first time the engine roared back to life, he cried. Didn't say a word, just stood there, grease on his hands, tears on his face. Elise came by after her shift and kissed him on the cheek. I haven't seen you stand that tall in months. Dwayne still came by, sometimes with takeout, sometimes just to sit in the garage and hold the flashlight. Other times, he came just to listen. That he never gave speeches, never called it mentorship, never told them how to live. He just showed up over and over again. But the world, even at its quietest, eventually hears things. It started with a call to Dwayne's team. A major talk show host. The kind of show that rarely invited people like Marcus and Elise but couldn't ignore the quiet story that had begun to echo through back channels. At first, Dwayne refused. This isn't for publicity, he said. This was never for that. But it wasn't about him. They wanted to hear what changed him, what made a man who spends his life in front of cameras do the biggest thing of all. When no one was looking, he didn't answer right away. Instead, he went back to the house. It was dusk when he arrived, the sky streaked in orange, the air warm with the scent of fresh-cut grass. The kids met him at the door. Uncle D, they shouted. He hugged them both, then walked slowly to the porch where Elise was sitting, barefoot, a book in her lap. Can I ask you something? He said. Of course. If I tell the story, he said carefully, would that feel like I'm taking something from you? Elise looked at him. Long and steady. No, she said. Because you never told this for yourself. And if the world hears even one part of what it looks like when someone stays, maybe more people will. She stood, placed her hand gently on his arm. Tell it. But tell it how it really was. That night, Dwayne sat in his truck for a long time, hands on the steering wheel, headlights off, house lights behind him, and for the first time since that fire, he said yes, not because he wanted to be seen, but because maybe someone else needed to hear. It had been over 3 months since the fire. 3 months since he first saw the sky turn orange behind the trees. 3 months since he carried a limping father away from the flames, and told a 10-year-old girl she was safe now. 3 months since he'd quietly bought a house, a car, a toolbox, and began showing up like someone who didn't just rescue a family but chose to stay. And now, Dwayne Johnson was sitting in a quiet dressing room backstage. The studio lights outside flickered, the murmur of audience members settling into their seats like a low wave in the distance. He looked at himself in the mirror. No tie. No stylist. Just a black shirt, simple jeans, boots still a little dusty from the garage floor where Marcus had taught his son how to change oil for the first time the week before. He didn't rehearse. Didn't need to, because he hadn't come to say anything new. He came to say what he'd never shared before out loud. A knock on the door. Mr. Johnson, you're on in 5. He nodded, stood, stretched once, and walked. The studio was packed, not the kind of packed where people scream and wave signs, the kind where people sit up straighter than usual. Expecting something real, the host greeted him with a warm smile. Ladies and gentlemen, you know him as a superstar, as a global icon. But tonight, he's here as something else. He's here, as himself. Applause. Soft, respectful, Dwayne walked out and shook the host's hand, sat in the chair across from him, nodded politely to the audience. For a moment, no one spoke, then the host leaned forward. So let's start with the obvious. You never told anyone about the fire. You never posted. Never filmed. Why? Dwayne's answer was simple: because it wasn't about me. The host nodded. So why are you here now? He paused, then looked straight at the camera. I'm here because someone told me I should speak. Not because it makes me look good. But because this world, it's starving for people who don't walk away. A quiet murmur from the audience. No clapping. Not yet, Dwayne continued. I didn't plan to drive down that road. I didn't plan to find that house burning. I didn't plan to hold a man who thought he failed his family, or carry kids in my arms who were barefoot and shaking in the snow. But I was there. So I stayed. The host was quiet now. Listening, and when I saw the way they stood there, no home, no car, no photos, no beds, I couldn't walk away. I could have sent money. I could have made a call. But it didn't feel right. Because some things, you don't fix from a distance. You fix them by showing up. Again. And again. Someone in the audience sniffled. Dwayne glanced down, collecting himself. I didn't buy that house to be a hero. I didn't bring groceries or books or a guitar so I could feel good. I did it because that family made me remember what we forget too easily. That strength isn't how loud you shout. It's how long you stand beside someone after the noise dies down. Now people clapped. Not the loud kind. The kind that comes from the chest, honest, restrained. The host leaned in. You gave them more than a house. You gave them dignity. Dwayne shook his head. No. They already had that. They just needed someone to reflect it back to them. The world made them feel invisible. I just reminded them they weren't. The host smiled. And they call you Uncle D. Dwayne chuckled. They do. And it means more to me than any title I've ever had. Silence. Then a pause. The host cleared his throat. You know, we live in a time where people film themselves giving sandwiches to the homeless. But you didn't want to be seen. Until now. I still don't. Dwayne said that he looked out over the studio, but someone might be watching this who feels like they've lost everything. Who thinks no one sees them. If that's you, I want to say this: there's still good out there. It doesn't scream. It doesn't trend. But it shows up. And when it does, it stays. The room was still. No one moved. Then, slowly, the audience rose to their feet. Not because they were told to. But because something inside them did. Dwayne stood, nodded once, and left the stage. Not a showman, not a celebrity, just a man who refused to let a fire be the end of someone's story. After the show aired, Dwayne Johnson returned to life like nothing had changed. That he didn't scroll through headlines, that he didn't repost clips or quote himself, that he didn't seek out the praise, because none of that had ever mattered. What mattered was the front porch light at the corner of Maple and Rosewood that he still passed by once a week. What mattered was the way the kids ran down the driveway when they saw his truck before it even stopped. What mattered was that the world finally knew the story, and still, he kept showing up. The family never grew used to it, not really, because it's hard to get used to someone who feels like a miracle, but in time, his visit stopped feeling like a favor. They became part of the rhythm. Not a guest. Not a savior. Just Dwayne. That he helped Marcus build shelves in the garage that summer. They opened Second Gear, a name Elise came up with when she saw her husband smile for the first time in weeks. That it wasn't just a garage. It became a place where second chances were rebuilt with calloused hands and quiet mornings. Dwayne didn't invest money, that he invested time, and time, as it turns out, is the rarest kind of gift. One afternoon, after helping hang a now open sign, he sat on the hood of a car while Elise brought out lemonade. That he looked at the garage, then at her, then said, "You know what I realized?" She waited. I've built gyms. Bought buildings. Sold out stadiums. But nothing's ever felt like this. Like watching something broken become whole again. Elise smiled. Maybe because this time, it wasn't about you. He laughed. Exactly. That fall, the daughter, now 11, stood in front of her class to give a presentation on The Bravest Person I Know. She didn't say Dwayne's name. She didn't need to. She said, sometimes heroes don't wear capes, sometimes they wear hoodies, and they show up when the fire's out. They don't fix everything. They just make sure you don't have to fix it alone. Her teacher wept. Dwayne didn't come for Thanksgiving that year. He didn't need to. Marcus brought him a plate the next morning wrapped in foil, with a note that said, "You're still family. Even when you're not hungry." That was the kind of love Dwayne carried now. Quiet. Undemanding. Permanent. Years passed, the garage grew, Elise returned to school, she became a full-time nurse, the kids got older. Wiser. Braver, and sometimes, when they'd see Dwayne at their front door, hands in his pockets, smiles soft and tired, they wouldn't run out yelling. They'd just open the door and say, "Come in. You're already home." People still asked him about that night, that fire, the gift, the house. But his answer never changed. I didn't save a family, that I just refused to forget them, and maybe that's all any of us ever need. The last time he visited, the sky was gold and blue. Fall leaves swirled on the ground that he stood in the driveway as the kids hugged him. Marcus handed him a keychain, a small piece of charred wood sealed in glass that it was from their old house. The one that burned, we kept this, he said, to remember where we came from. But we put it in glass, so it doesn't stain anything else. Dwayne looked at it for a long time, then nodded, and slipped it into his pocket. Thank you, he said. For what? Marcus asked. For letting me stay. Dwayne replied that he got into his truck. No music, no noise, just the hum of tires on pavement, and the weight of something good resting quietly in his chest. That he didn't need headlines or applause. That he had something better. A story that wouldn't go viral but would live in them, and in the people they would one day stand beside, when it was their turn to stay. Because sometimes, the greatest thing a man can do is not save the world, just refuse to walk away from someone else's